This is Histories and Mysteries. I'm your host, Ashley, and your other host,
Jessica, and your other host,
Rochelle.
And on today's episode, Ashley is going to be talking about the Duyst murders, which I've never heard about, so I'm excited about. And Rochelle's going to be talking about Dyatlov Pass, and it's going to be her part one. And I'm also excited for that story. I know a lot about it, but it's super interesting. So
yeah, I'm really excited. I don't really know anything about it, so I just know that it's like some Russian people died hiking. So
yeah, it is. It's all about some Russian people who died hiking. But it's actually so much more than that, and they still, although they think they've kind of figured out what's happened, there's still a lot of questions that are totally unanswered. And so we'll talk all about it this week, and then next week we'll talk about some of the insane theories and what they think actually happened.
Also, before we forget, like I did last week, we wanted to let you guys know that on our TikTok, Histories and Mysteries Pod, we are now going to be doing a ghost feature of the week. And so you can go and check out one of our, each week we'll have a new kind of ghost story that you can listen to and hear a little bit more about it. So check that out. We've already got 2 up at this point. I did one and Jessica did one, and next week Rochelle will do one. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to do this murder by John Seisling. I'm from Grand Rapids, Michigan, and he was a classmate of mine. We went to school together, and I actually worked like right down the road from his house. It was my very first job ever. I was a server at Bob Evans restaurant. Do you guys have Bob Evans up there?
Nope.
No.
It's kind of like it's like a breakfast place, kind of like an IHOP, but like a little bit nicer than an IHOP.
Oh, interesting.
I love IHOP.
It's, I do too. It's so good. Bob Evans is really good too. But, and I was leaving work one day and there was like a ton of cop cars and the road was blocked off. I had to go a different way to get home, and come to find out, this classmate of mine, like legit was in like my English class with me, murdered his family.
Wow,
that's insane.
Yeah, his dad was a trucker, so his dad was away, but he murdered his mom, his 15-year-old sister, and a 6-year-old sister, and sexually assaulted one of his sisters too.
Ew.
Yeah, and then after that he murdered them with a baseball bat and I can't remember if it was a knife or a gun.
I feel like I've heard that story before.
Have you?
I feel like I might have heard that story on another podcast before.
Well, I mean, so this is the story I wanted to do. There's not a lot of information on it. So basically the only information that I could find was that, after he murdered them, he showered and then called the cops, and they showed up and he still had like wet hair, and he said like some kids broke in and like murdered his family. And then obviously it was very obvious that he did it. And then he said like his alter ego Johnny made him do it. And then at one point I think he said the devil made him do it. But he got sentenced to life in prison, and that's about the only information I could find on it. So I decided to do a different story, but
this reminds me a lot about the DeFeo murders.
Yeah. Maybe that's what you're thinking of, Rochelle.
Yeah, maybe. I've definitely, like, heard of one really similar to that where, like, the kid did it, like, murdered his whole family and then acted, like, real nonchalant about it.
Gotcha. Yeah, it was really weird. And I remember him in school, like, he was a nice enough kid. He was really quiet, but he had his whole head shaved, and then he had 2, like, long things of hair coming out, like, the front, kind of like devil horns almost, but he would just wear them down on his face, like, he didn't spike them up or anything. So he was kind of like a different kid, but, I mean, not anything that I would have been like, oh yeah, he's a murderer,
Was he quiet?
Yeah, he was really quiet. I didn't know him very well.
Oh, okay.
But
that's insane to know that you literally went to school with, like, I can't think of anyone or anything like that anywhere close to me. Like last year, and I think I showed you guys this on Snapchat, like where the last murder happened in Kingston, where a guy was high on whatever, but basically took out like a big knife and started stabbing at whoever was around him.
Ooh.
and stabbed an old man in the face a bunch of times and then ended up killing another guy, like, right on the street out front of a Staples. And the police had to come and shoot him down. So that's, like, the only thing. But to actually have gone to school with somebody that murdered their family is insane.
Yeah, it's really crazy. And I know he's, like, still in prison. And I mean, good. Like, obviously all these rumors swirled afterwards, like, oh, his parents were abusive. No, they weren't. You know, all this kind of stuff. So, and I don't really ever know, you know, what caused him to actually go through with it. Maybe he was found criminally sane, so he did stand trial, but you know, that's not the same as being actually sane. So who knows? But yeah, really crazy.
Did they ever find out why he did it?
No, he always just said it was like either the devil told him to do it or his alter ego Johnny told him to do it, but I couldn't find anything about like why he actually did it.
Man.
So, but I wanted to tell that story, but like I said, I mean, we would have been done by right now. So
yeah,
I decided
you just did.
Yeah, the end. So I decided to do a different story, which also comes out of my hometown, Grand Rapids. And it's the murder of Sandra Duyst, D-U-Y-S-T, Duyst. So what I want you guys to think of is this the story of a man murdering his wife, or is this the story of a woman committing suicide and trying to take her husband down with her?
Ooh.
So David and Sandy met in high school and became high school sweethearts. They attended the same college, Calvin University. It's a small university in Grand Rapids. It's a Christian university. And they eventually got married. According to Ken Coker, who's a journalist there, they were very religious and really well thought of in the community. I didn't know them. Obviously, they were older than me. Her murder happens in the year 2000, so I was like a freshman in high school, and these are adults, so I didn't know them. But
did you hear a lot about it, though? Is it, like, everywhere?
You know, I feel like it was. My parents said they remember hearing about it all the time for a really, really long time. But, I mean, I was like, how old are you when you're a freshman? Like 13 or 14, so I didn't really hear much about it. But
I think we're slightly younger in Canada. I think we're like 12, 13. No,
oh, really?
13, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so us, we would be, I don't know, 17 when I graduated high school, so 16, 15, 14. Yeah, I was probably like 13. Yeah, I was 13 going on 14, so. David was an insurance salesman, and Sandy salesman. And Sandy boarded horses in a stable on their farm. They did have 3 kids, but they weren't my age, so again, I didn't know them. And he did really well in insurance sales, and I'm sure if they boarded horses and stuff like that and had stables on their land, they probably had quite a bit of money.
Yeah. Horses are expensive.
Yeah,
like really
for sure.
expensive.
Yeah. And Sandy was a horse lady. She loved it. She loved being around her horses. But unfortunately, as Jessica knows, because we've talked about this previously, horses aren't all fun and games, and you can get hurt.
My mom, too. My mom's collarbone is totally separated from where it should be because she was thrown off a horse when she was younger.
Ooh.
Yeah, so horses are dangerous.
Yeah. But the same thing happened to Sandy, except she was in the stable and the horse got spooked and it kicked her in the head multiple times, and like she was bleeding and, you know, barely conscious, and she ended up crawling to her neighbor's house where he called 911. And after that, she had mood swings, depression. A year after the accident, basically her marriage had totally deteriorated because of her mood swings and depression and all that kind of stuff.
Imagine, that's sad.
I know, right?
Mood
like, it's not her
depression.
fault. Yeah.
Oh.
She went on antidepressants, so she was obviously being seen by some kind of medical doctor. But 18 months after the accident, David once again called 911 saying that Sandy shot herself in the head and committed suicide.
Oh, no.
She was dead on arrival at 40 years old.
Oh, poor girl.
Yeah. So in her bedroom, the police found a 9mm semi-automatic handgun. And David had said that they were having marital issues, so they slept in separate rooms. And he said he heard the gunshot. He was out on the couch. He heard the gunshot, and he went in and saw her laying there. He moved the gun from her hand, went out, and called 911.
Okay, so obvious. That's, like, super suspicious right off the bat. Like, who moves the gun first?
Right? That's what I thought, too. Like, you'd think you'd run up and, like, grab them or, like, you know what I mean?
You don't go, well, better get this out of the way. She's going to use it. Like, she's not going to... Oh.
Yeah. Well, his children woke up, and they did hear David's movements downstairs, and it
Cooperated?
Corroborated.
Yeah, that one. Corroborated David's story. And since it was a suicide, you know, they did want to make sure and, like, look into it a little bit. So I'm actually really proud of this police department. They did a really good job. They took his clothing to examine it for blood stains. They didn't see anything. They also had him take a lie detector test, and he passed.
Oh.
Yeah, but, like, you can shoot somebody and not get their blood spattered.
Was it one of the kids?
I don't know.
Well, maybe this is like a John Bonet situation where, like, everybody's so sure that the brother did it.
Well, and, you know, Jessica and I have talked about this before, but obviously, Rochelle, you're new. So what are your thoughts on lie detector tests?
My thoughts on lie detector, I don't think that you can use them as, like, proper evidence.
Yeah. Yeah.
'Cause, like, some people are really good liars.
Yeah, and they know how to fake them. That's just kind of my stance as well.
Yeah. I mean, get probably the average person, it'll detect, like, their heart getting faster and stuff like that when they're, like, getting nervous because they're lying. But, like, there are some full-on sociopaths out there that, like, don't give a shit if they lie and it doesn't change anything about them. Like...
Well, and also, like, how you word stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't think I don't think it's good hard proof or anything like that.
Yeah, I agree. But, and I wrote my notes, but since I'm telling this story on our podcast, we know something fishy is afloat. So, apparently, I didn't realize this, but Michigan performs autopsies on all suicides.
That's good.
And
that's a good thing.
Yeah, I did not know that, and I was like, oh, go Michigan. And I don't know if I want to say this yet or if I want to hold on.
Why, is it like a spoiler?
Yeah, I'm gonna cut that out, and I'm gonna leave that for the end.
Okay.
So there was blood splatter on the gun, but Sandy didn't have any on her hand or her arm. But now, apparently, a year before her death, Sandy called her sister and said, if anything ever happens to me, I left a note in my china cabinet for you. Please go find it. And so when she died, the sister called the police and told them this. And so the police went looking through the china cabinet and they found a letter from her. And it reads as follows. To anyone interested in what happened to me, look first to David Duyst. For on November 19th, my accident, that horse accident she was talking about, or that happened to her, was no accident. David beat me with a hammer/axe.
Oh.
He came from behind while I was in Dexter's stall. He hit me repeatedly. Only when I told him I would sell the house and support him in leaving the partnership he had formed with my dad would he let me go.
Wow.
I ran to Gray's house, and then David called 911. I feared he would come back and kill me. If anything has happened to me, look first to David Duyst. He could be my killer. I would never commit suicide. He may have killed me. Respectfully, Sandra A. Duyst.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a heavy note.
Yes. A forensic document examiner found the handwriting to be consistent with Sandy's, and they found a fingerprint on the letter that was Sandy's fingerprint, and they also found DNA where she licked the envelope to seal it. So this letter was legit and from Sandy.
Wow.
But, did anybody check her over after she had her accident? Are her injuries consistent with a horse kicking her in the head? Or is it just so far in the past that we can never know?
So that's actually my next paragraph. Good question, Rochelle.
Okay.
It says, medical records show that the doctor who did examine her said it didn't look like a horse injury to him. But nothing ever came of that in his report.
Yeah, so why didn't anybody go to the cops about it?
I don't know. I think a lot of times, I interned in a domestic violence shelter for a while, and I think a lot of times people feel like it's not their business, like they don't want to get involved, or if they're wrong, what's going to happen if they're wrong, and they falsely accuse this guy of beating his wife. And with doctors, I think sometimes they get so busy that things fall through the cracks. Not that that's an okay thing to happen, but I'm assuming that's what happened here.
Okay.
And John...
Unless she was so scared, too, that she, insisted, right?
Yeah. And I think, the most dangerous time for a woman is... a woman in an abusive relationship is when she's leaving. So it's, everybody always says, well, if he already tried to kill her, why did she stay with him? And I think it's easy to wonder that when you're not in that situation, but abusers are so manipulative. And, for her, she probably didn't have the financial backing to be on her own. She had her kids that she didn't want to, lose. And there's a lot that goes into it for abused women. But if you are abused, please seek out help. There's always help. And I'm going to put a hotline in our information for this episode for it. But she also had a friend, John Hulsing, who said that he went into the stall of the horse that had apparently kicked Sandy, right after it happened, and he said it didn't look like the accident that was being said, because there wasn't any blood or anything in the stall. It was all outside of the stall. So
yeah, but the horse could have been, I don't know. This whole thing is fishy.
Yeah. So David said that the letter was a lie, but he did admit that he was having an affair with his secretary, and Sandy had just found out. Oh. And he ended up giving the police a voicemail that Sandy had left on her work phone after she found out, and the voicemail said, "David, as far as I'm concerned, my Christmas is over. My life is over, and you can go on without me. I don't know what else to say. Enjoy your work. Enjoy your life."
That's very fishy.
Yeah. So David said that it was a suicide. Now, one of the evidence that I think kind of seals it for me is that she was shot in the head not once, but twice.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah, there you go. There's not many spots in the head that you would survive. Unless it was, at a really, really crazy angle that for somehow just, grazed through her skull. But, he moved the gun first and then called 911. There's 2 shots in her skull. Her injuries are inconsistent with a horse riding accident back then, or what they thought the accident was.
Right.
And there's that wacko letter,
Yeah. And, David tried to say that the 2 shots were either, the gun double fired, or, she shot herself once and didn't die, and so she shot herself again. And the detective said it's not unheard of for people to have 2 bullet injuries in their head. He's like, it's rare, but it's not unheard of. So just to cover their bases, prosecutors sent the gun in to be examined, the exact gun that was used, to see if it was something that could accidentally have double fired. And the expert found that the gun wasn't used that much. It was pretty clean. And it had been designed for safety. So in order to fire the trigger...
That seems like such an ironic thing to say.
I know, right?
That a gun was designed for safety.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. So in order to fire, the trigger had to be pulled back all of the way. Like, you couldn't pull it a little bit, or, you know, it had to literally be pulled back all of the way. And most guns require between 4 to 6 pounds of pressure to pull the trigger back. This gun required 11.5 pounds of pressure to be pulled back. So there's no way it could have accidentally double fired.
So it was designed for safety.
Yes.
Or very strong fingers.
So, the autopsy also revealed that the first shot was instantly fatal. So there's no way she could have shot herself twice.
Yeah.
But if he shot his wife 2 times at close range, why wasn't there any blood spatter on his clothes? And again, the prosecutor wanted to, you know, cover all of his bases. So, since it was originally a suicide, they just kind of held up the clothes and looked at it, apparently, and they didn't see any bloodstains on it. But now that it was an investigation, they took it and they used, like, their different forensic techniques on it, and they found blood in the inner weave, which showed a high-velocity blood spatter.
Ooh. Yeah.
Yeah, and
I feel like a high velocity blood spatter too would be very, very tiny droplets.
yeah, exactly. And David tried to explain this away by saying that when he went to her, she was coughing, and she was coughing up blood.
No, not if it was like instantly fatal.
What?
Right. So he was arrested and charged with first-degree murder.
Good.
And apparently the Duysts were heavily in debt. Literally just paying, you know, paycheck to paycheck. All the money was going to bills. David was an insurance salesman, like we said earlier, and he wrote a $500,000 insurance policy out on Sandy. Even if she committed suicide, he would still get the payout.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And they found out that his secretary was also pushing him to leave Sandy. And one of the guys in there said the motives were the oldest in the world, money and women, and he had both of them.
So wait, he was just like assuming she was gonna maybe kill herself?
Right, exactly. Like, just in case.
I mean, she did have mood swings and depression.
Yeah.
But like, still, so does most folks.
Right? We're all a little depressed.
Yeah.
So they decided to have him give testimony, and they said that it kind of hurt his case more than it helped, because he was they said he was up there and he was lighthearted and jolly, and it just came off real bad.
Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah. So after only about an hour of deliberation, all 12 jurors found him guilty, and he received life in prison without the possibility.
He received lice? He probably did receive lice in prison.
Let's give all of our murderers lice. That would be really annoying. I think that'd be a great punishment.
Prison probably did that for him anyways.
That's true. Probably some bed bugs, too. And he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. And I was talking to my dad about it today, you know, because he remembers the case. And I can see where, had it not been for that second shot in her head, he may have gotten away with it, because I think they could have placed enough reasonable doubt in the jury. You know, like, she wrote that letter, but she was trying to frame him. You know, she found out about his secretary, and that's why she killed herself, and then she left that voicemail, which showed her state of mind, and, you know, I could see them kind of placing enough doubt, but that second shot, where the first one was nearly, like, instantly fatal, that just, there was no way. So
I still think the whole moving the gun first is just so strange. Like,
yeah,
like, gotta get it out of her way, or it's, oh, but sorry, I forgot this gun was built for safety. So then why did he have to move it out of her way?
Oh gosh. But yeah, so I mean, it was a really famous case, obviously, and they ended up putting the house up for sale, and someone did buy it and is now living in it.
I don't like that.
I know.
I don't.
Would you live in a house somebody was
Nope.
murdered in, do you think?
Absolutely not.
No? I don't
No.
think I could either. Maybe, like, somebody died, but not, like, brutally murdered.
I think, like, even if someone died, I don't think I could. Like, every bump, I'd be like, what is that? You know?
Yeah, you just, like, hope that it's, like, a nice, sweet old person who just peacefully died.
Who wants to do your dishes?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess if it was, like, a nice, sweet old person, I wouldn't hate it so much, but...
Old people are creepy, too.
That's true. Yeah, they
Yeah,
can
that's true.
be.
That's true.
I guess it depends on where, like, what era they're from, too. Like, a modern old
Yeah, for
person's
sure.
probably okay.
Just like an 1800s old person
Yeah.
is just where you draw the line, though.
Because, like, think about it. If you had to see their ghost, it'd be a lot more terrifying to see, like, an old woman in, like, Victorian getup than it would be just to see, like, an old lady dressed in, like, the stuff my grandma
Like a
wears.
cute little moo-moo or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, exactly. Like, exactly that.
It's true. Like, have you seen Woman in Black?
Yeah,
That old lady is freaking creepy.
true.
Yeah, that's true. Jessica, didn't you, you just sent both Rochelle and I a link of TikTok where they saw, like, the Madame LaLaurie's ghost.
Madame LaLaurie.
Yeah, she was in the Victorian garb, and that's creepy.
Yeah.
It is
Yeah.
really creepy.
The Victorians, man, do you think they realized that they were that creepy? Or do you think, like... Or do you think they were just like, nah, this is normal?
But, like, also...
I think the clothes are beautiful.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But not ghost-wise. But, yeah, that's Jessica. I kind of wish we still dressed really pretty like
Yeah.
It'd be
I want
very...
a big dress.
Take you, like, so much time to get ready in the morning.
That's
though.
true. It would be
You
very
have to wake up
time-consuming.
so early.
Oh, goodness. But, yeah, so that's my story. Sorry it was a little short, but I really wanted to do the Grand Rapids-based stories. They're just pretty cut and dry, but, at the time, they didn't realize that she had been shot in the head twice. So it was, my dad said it was a pretty long, drawn-out thing until they kind of clinched that little incident there.
Yeah, wow.
Well, it was a great story.
That was great. Yeah.
Thanks. Now I'm super excited for your story, Rochelle. Like I said, I know nothing about say it for me.
Dyatlov Pass. I think.
Dyatlov.
I don't know. It's all Russian, so like I am going to screw up every single word, every single name, every single place because I don't speak Russian. I don't speak anything remotely near Russian.
Ooh, I'm excited.
It's very interesting.
Good mystery.
Yeah.
But I think I gotta go take care of my baby, so I think I need to be absent for the story. I'm very sorry.
Okay,
That's
no problem.
okay. Aw.
So,
Babies happen.
Yes, they do.
Okay, so I thought it'd be fun to kind of, for my first story ever, cover one of my absolute favorite mysteries of all time, which isn't really a mystery anymore. They do believe that they've solved it, but we'll get to that at a later date.
Ooh.
So, the Dyatlov Pass incident. And full disclaimer here, this takes place in Russia, so all the names and all of the places are very, very Russian, and I am very, very not Russian.
Okay.
So I'm definitely going to say these all wrong.
I'm sure you'll do great.
I went and I tried to listen to other people say it, and it didn't help me.
Russian's hard.
So my sources were the dyatlovpass.com website, which is just a huge archive of just about absolutely everything you could ever want to know about this mystery. Literally everything. It has all of the crime scene. Well, it's not really a crime, but the photos from when this went down. So it is kind of gruesome. But if you're into that and you're kind of weird like I am, and you like to look at that kind of stuff, Google Dyatlov.com, and somebody, whoever made that website, is a genius. Absolutely everything about everything is on there. And then the other source I used for this bit was a DiscoverMagazine.com article by Hannah Sue. So, Dyatlov Pass. What happened? So in the wintry Ural Mountains, this is in Russia, in 1959, rescuers found the bodies of 9 Russian hikers scattered across the landscape. Which, doesn't seem so out of the ordinary. It's a really, really dangerous area to go hiking. But when you listen to the circumstances that all of these Russian hikers were found in, that's when things get a little weird. So when the hikers did not arrive at their destination more than a week earlier, no one expected this adventure to have turned into such a perplexing nightmare. So it's bad. Disclaimer. Okay, so I kind of want to set this up with a bit of the timeline leading up to the incident and the hikers kind of making their way to where it happened on the mountain. So this is 1959, and January 23rd is where it all starts off. So the group of what was initially 10 hikers take train number 45 from, and excuse my pronunciation here, Sverdlovsk to Serov. So they're going from S place 1 to S place 2. On the 24th, the group arrives in Serov in the morning. And from the 25th to the 27th, they slowly make their way to the beginning of the hiking route. And they take a train, and then they take a bus, and then they take a truck, and then they take a sled. And they eventually come to an old abandoned mining settlement. So that 10th hiker on the 28th gets sent home due to poor health. So he wasn't feeling very good. He didn't think he could make it the rest of the excursion. They weren't too far into their route already. And so he decides it's best to head home. And he is the only one that goes home.
Can you imagine being the only one that survives and having to hear about that shit after and live with everything?
I do not know how that man lived his life after knowing that all of his friends, and he too, if he didn't go home that day, there's no way he wouldn't have also died.
Yeah, the survivor guilt you'd feel from that, which you shouldn't, by the way, but that'd be rough.
All right, so that's the 28th of January. So after he says his goodbyes, he goes off home. The other 9 hikers continue on. So from the 28th of January to the 30th, the group hikes during the day and they camp at night until they arrive on the banks of the Ospia River. On the 31st, this is where things start to get a little out of the ordinary, especially for a group of what really was very experienced hikers.
Okay.
So on the 31st, the group attempts to ascend up the mountain the shortest way from the Ospia riverbank to Lozva River, which is what they now call Dyatlov Pass. That's where they're going. And they end up going back. Don't really know why they ended up going back. So February 1st now, the group makes a cache to lighten their load, and they end up going about 500 meters off their planned route. Again, a little bit unusual for such a group of experienced hikers.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's the dead of Russian winter. The weather is already going to be horrendous. I can't imagine being out there on a good day, let alone when you're in a place where avalanches and stuff like that are really prominent and could catch you at any time. So from here on, it's questions and we're not exactly sure. So some of the groups carried journals, some of them had cameras and stuff like that they took pictures on, but it's still not exactly clear from here on out what really was going on. All right, so they take off a lot of their stuff to try and lighten their load because their hike's getting a bit harder at this point. They go 500 meters off their planned route, and they finally pitch their tent on the north slope of the Kholat Syakhl, which is the mountainside that they're on. And on February 2nd, the entire group of 9 hikers dies under wildly mysterious circumstances. Just dead.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah. And there's they keep reiterating on pretty much everything that I've ever seen or heard about this incident. They knew what they were doing. Like, this wasn't their first hike. They knew what they were doing, and they knew exactly how to kind of go about anything that would normally pop up for a hike of this sort. So for them, all of a sudden...
Well, Rochelle, I think I solved the mystery for you.
Did you?
Aliens.
I think it was aliens, too. We'll get to that. There's like a billion theories. Like, the list just goes on and on and on and on, and aliens aren't even the weirdest. Like, not even the weirdest.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, like, you would think, like, aliens would be the weirdest, but aliens are not even the weirdest theory here.
Really?
Like, aliens seem like, oh yeah, that's what happened, compared to some of the other theories. Like, it's so much easier to just believe. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about who they were, because that's really important, and a lot of the times they just kind of focus on what happened to them and not really who they were as people. So, Igor Alexeyevich Dyatlov, for whom this whole incident is named after. He was the leader of the group. He was a student at the 5th Faculty of Radio University at UPI University, which is a big Russian university for engineering. He was only 23 years old when he died. And then one of his colleagues wrote about him in his obituary and said, for Igor Dyatlov, the mountains were calling and he had to go. So, like, this trip was like his baby. Like, this was his thing. How sad. Yuri Nikolaevich Doroshenko was a 4th-year student of radio engineering at the same university. He had a very impulsive personality, and this is kind of funny, he was most known at the school for running at a giant bear with a geologist's hammer in hiking club while on another one of these trips.
Oh my gosh.
So, I guess they ran into, like, a big bear. Of course, it's the Russian mountains. I was going to say the Russian outback.
Russian outback.
The Russian outback. And I guess there was, like, a bear coming at the group, and so he just grabbed one of the geologist hammers and was like, no, bear, you're not coming at us. But that's what he was most well known for throughout school, was that time that he ran at a bear. But can you imagine, like, how brave do you have to be to just, like, run straight for it? Like, and probably a grizzly bear, too, if it's Russia, right? Okay, so this is the one thing you're going to notice as I kind of go on and introduce some of the other members of this group, is they've all kind of been in these really crazy, like, near-death experiences on past trips. And to think that they're just, like, gung-ho to do it again and again and again is nuts to me.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even want to go outside in the winter, let alone go on, like, a crazy camping hike like this, in which I might have to chase a bear away with a hammer.
Right.
Okay, so, he was 21 years old when he died. Okay, so the first of the girls, Ludmila, or Luda is what they called her, Ludmila Alexandrovna Dubinina. She was a 4th-year student, and she was the youngest of the hikers. She was only 20 years old. And she was really active in school in sports. She was a singer, and she did a lot of photography, and she was actually a really good photographer. And this is her insane near-death story, once survived being shot in the leg accidentally by a hunter on another camping trip.
Oh my gosh.
I can't imagine. This is like the most badass group. These people are insane.
Yeah, I definitely want them on a hiking trip with me for sure.
I do sound like a good group to be around. Okay, so Alexander Sergeyevich Kolatov was one of the only ones that they didn't have a lot to say about him. So he was a 4th-year physics major at UPI University, so the same university as the others. And he was only 24 when he died. So They were all so young and so, like,
Yeah.
promising. Like, they had their whole futures ahead of them. They were all these, like, insanely good students at this big university. And then just, like, that, like, for something this horrendous to happen is, like, unthinkable. Really, really it is. Okay, so the other girl, Zina Alexvina Kolmogorova. So she was a 5th-year UPI student, and her crazy brush with death thing was she survived being bitten by a viper.
Oh, geez.
On another hiking trip. These all happen on the same kind of trip. And they're still like, yep, let's do it again. Let's do it again. Knowing that this has happened and probably will happen again. Like, I cannot believe it. Like, all I can imagine... Like, I wonder how long it took them to realize that a real disaster was, like, actually happening that they weren't going to be able to get themselves out of. Jeez. Like, I guess that's something I never really thought of before now, actually, is, like, how long did it take them? When did they realize that this was something they weren't prepared for?
Yeah.
So... Zina, which was her nickname, she was full of ideas, she was liked by all, and she was once even called the engine of the university.
Oh, cute!
So she was 22 years old, and Yuri Yudin, who was that guy, the 10th hiker, the one that actually went home and survived, said about her that everywhere she went, she filled the place with the pleasant breath of her soul.
Yeah, that's really sad.
So, like, obviously these were, like, really good people to be around. All right, so there's 3 Yuris in this story, by the way. There's 2 Yuris that stayed, and then there's a Yuri that, the Yuri that went home and survived. And so when I kind of get into when they get found, I'll just call them by, like, Yuri Y or Yuri K or Yuri, their last names, instead of trying to say their, like, actual names every time. So another Yuri Alexevich Krivanashenko. They called him Georgie. And I can understand why. They already had too many Yuris. He was actually a friend of Igor's, so he didn't go to the university. He was just a buddy of Igor Dyatlov's. But his near-death thing was he experienced the Kyshtym disaster. So that's when a plutonium plant leaked radioactive matters, like, all over the place.
Oh my gosh.
And he stayed and helped clean up the leak and was exposed to radiation himself. All of these people have been through the worst already. Like, how unfair is it for them to then go through literally the worst thing that anybody could ever go through, which is, like, death out in the mountains. Okay, so he experienced that Kyshtym disaster. He was exposed to radiation, but he was a joker, and this is my favorite. He played the mandolin. I like him. He was 23, and he died only 5 days before his birthday.
Oh.
So he was probably gonna spend his birthday, like, in the mountains on this fun hiking trip with his buddies. Aww. And to not be that close to your birthday. So sad. Okay, so Rustem Vladimirovich Slobodin, or Rustic is what they called him, was very athletic, very honest, and very decent, so he was such a nice guy as well, although he didn't really say much, and he also played the mandolin.
Ooh.
And there was a mandolin found at the campsite when all of the bodies were found as well, so somebody was singing some songs out there.
Oh.
He was the first to die, so Rustic was the first to die, and he was also only 23. Nikolai Vladimirovich Thibault Brignol, or Thibault for short, was working in construction at the time of the incident. He had a very high energy, he was really super friendly, really inventive, and was also only 23 years old. So the oldest of the group is Semen Alexeyevich Zolotaryov, who liked to be called Sasha. He was an instructor at the Kurovka tour base, and he was the oldest and most mysterious member of the group, is what pretty much every site that I looked at called him. He was like this older, mysterious tour guide man. And if you thought dying before your 5 days before your birthday was bad, try dying on your 38th birthday.
Aww.
So sad. But, like, I want to know why they called him mysterious. Like, was it just because he was so much older and, like, had so much more life experience? Or, like, was there something else there? Maybe we'll get into that with some of the theories that we talk about later. And finally, Yuri Yudin, the only survivor, because he went home early.
That's really, I feel for that guy. But I mean, like, he obviously lucked out.
Yeah. But, like, what's worse? Like, living with the knowledge that that could have been you and that all your friends, because they were feeling okay. Like,
yeah.
He was probably, like, really upset that he couldn't carry on, too. Like, he was probably devastated that he was feeling sick. Oh, gosh. Okay. Here's where it gets nice and gruesome. Finding the bodies. So, on February 25th, Boris Slobatov and a group of rescuers finally found the trail of skis that he assumed to have belonged to Dyatlov. So, they all died on February 2nd. It's now February 25th.
Wow.
It's a really long time. So everybody obviously knew something was going on. They knew right away when they didn't show up at their destination on the day that they expected. And they even gave them, like, a leeway date. Like, we're probably going to be back on this day, but, like, we might be back a little later. So don't freak out until we get to this specific date. But then that day passed, and then, like, so many other days passed. And we're, like, almost a whole month later. When the rescuers finally find the trail of skis that they assumed belonged to Igor Dyatlov. And this isn't even the day that they find any of the bodies either. So the next day, so the day after, they discovered the tent on the slope of the Kolatsiakal, so on the slope of the mountainside. Ironically, Boris Slobatov, who is one of the leaders of the rescuers, was one of the people who constructed the tent, and he recognized it immediately when he saw it. So he made that tent.
Okay.
And then to see it in the state that it's in must have been, like, heartbreaking. So, the tent is important in this story as it is where this tragedy began. When the tent was found, rescuers were baffled when instead of using the tent door, the group cut their way out of the tent from the inside.
Wow.
So they literally didn't even bother to open the door. They cut their way out of the tent. So you can imagine what was going on that made them, like, need to leave.
That's insane.
So forensics later confirmed that they did indeed cut their way out of the tent. So they weren't expecting to find all of the hikers dead. So there was no attempt to preserve or record any of the footprints around the Dyatlov Pass area either. So there goes, like, all your evidence.
Why? I mean, they were gone for a month. Like, why wouldn't you expect to find them?
Well, they were really experienced hikers. Like, they would have known exactly what to do. Should there have been an avalanche? Should there have been some sort of something? Like, they should have known exactly where to pitch their tent. So it's kind of confusing as to why they did decide to pitch their tent on such a risky slope. But I guess they assumed that they would just eventually find them in really poor condition. It's rough, man. Okay. Finding the tent in such bad condition also told investigators that the group had left without their outer clothes, without their hats, without their gloves, and without their shoes.
That's crazy.
Nothing. They left without, like, anything. Like, some of them, and we'll talk about this in a bit, like, had certain clothing items or certain things, but they definitely weren't like, let's get all of our clothes on and get out of the tent. It was like, we need to leave right now and we don't have time to grab anything.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even like not having to grab, like, a jacket or, like, anything when a fire alarm goes off. I can't imagine, like, having to run out in the middle of, like, this Russian mountain in the dead of winter. It's freezing out and you can't even, like, stop and put some more socks on. Like, what was going on? So So only an exceptionally serious threat would cause a group of 9 physically fit and experienced hikers to urgently flee the safety of their tent in the middle of winter and in an inhabited forest to top it all off. So what were they running from? Really, what were they running from?
Yeah, I'm anxious to hear the theories.
Finding the bodies helped piece together some of the story. Just some of the story, though. So on February 27th, at around 11 o'clock a.m., 1.5 kilometers from the tent, the first 2 bodies were found. So Yuri Doroshenko, Yuri D, and Yuri Krivonoshenko, Yuri K, were spotted close by a cedar tree. There was a little flat area next to the tree where there were the remains of a campfire. They found Yuri D frozen, without his clothes and with his hand burned. And a little to the side, they found Yuri K in the same state. So under Yuri D, they found 3 or 4 branches of the cedar tree. So it was almost like he might have been climbing the tree and the branches broke.
Okay.
But why he was climbing the tree, don't know. Yuri K's right leg had no footwear, but his left foot had a torn up brown sock. So you can kind of see where I'm going with the fact that, like, they had some clothes, but then they didn't have all of their clothes, and it really didn't make sense, like, what clothes they had and what clothes they didn't. So the matching brown sock was found next to the fire, half burnt. There are only a few visible injuries on his body and some blood. Yuri D also had 2 pairs of socks on his feet, and he had blood all over his face and his hands. But they still, at the time, weren't quite sure if the body was actually Yuri D yet. But both of those boys they found first froze to death.
Well, and I can kind of see how you can make the argument where the one Yuri was climbing the tree to get away from something, fell, and then, like, got knocked unconscious and froze to death.
And it kind of makes sense, like, that they found, like, the one sock was half burnt and, like, his hand was half burnt. Like, they were trying to, like, warm themselves up by basically sticking their hands in the fire.
Did they both have a burn or just the one?
So Yuri K, one of them had a burn on his hand, and then the other one's sock was burnt up.
Oh, okay.
See, it just doesn't make any sense as to, like, who had certain things and who didn't. So the next of the group to be found was the leader, Igor Dyatlov, and he was about 300 meters from the cedar tree. Igor was found face up with his hands clenched in fists above the snow on his chest.
Oh.
Like, whoa. His jacket was unbuttoned. He, too, had no shoes on and one cotton sock on his left foot. And he had a mismatched woolen sock on his right foot. All of his injuries seemed to be external, and his cause of death also was hypothermia. So the next body was one of the girls, Neda Kolmogorova. She was the 4th to be found, about 630 meters from the cedar. She was face down in the snow with her head towards the tent. So it's almost like she was trying to get back to the tent.
Oh my gosh.
And whatever happened when she died, she, like, fell forward with her head towards the tent. She was better dressed than the other boys that they found. She had on 2 hats, long sleeves, a sweater with a torn cuff. She also had on pants, ski pants, and 3 pairs of socks, but she didn't have any shoes or boots or anything like that, just socks. She had 5 rubles in her pocket, so that's their currency over there. I don't know if it still is Russian currency, but at the time it would have been. And I didn't think to look up how much that would be in today's money, but it's not a lot considering one of the other guys had, like, way more in his pocket.
Gotcha. That, to me, like, her state of dress sounds like she went to sleep like that and then, like, just took her shoes off. But it was, like, cold, and so she decided to sleep like that, and then whatever happened, you know, she took off.
Yeah. Well, the other thing they think, too, is, like, they started to take clothes from the people that died first.
Oh.
And, like, pile them on
Okay.
themselves. Like, they knew that there was really nothing else they could do but try to keep themselves warm, and do that by, like, taking... So maybe that makes sense as to, like, why some of the bodies have, like, a random sock on one foot and then, like, none on the other foot.
It's weird to me that if they were having to take clothing off of other people to survive, why they just stayed in that spot. Like, why they didn't try and travel elsewhere.
Yeah, I know. It's like, what was going on? Really?
Yeah.
What was? She also had a military-style protective mask on her person. And her injuries indicated that the cause of death was hypothermia due to a violent accident.
Oh.
So something happened that was, like, a really bad bodily harm that knocked her out and caused her to freeze to death.
Oh, wow.
But what happened? Okay. We don't know what happened.
Yeah, that's weird.
So the fifth... It's, like, insane. So the fifth body found was Rustem Slobodin. He was found face down, covered in snow, about 480 meters from the cedar tree on March 5th. So this is a couple days later. So it's nearly a week after the first 4 bodies were found.
Wow.
So he's far enough away from the other bodies that it took them almost a week to finally find. Like, insane. Like, good on those rescuers for continuing on.
Especially that far away.
Yeah, and for all we know, they're hiking in the same conditions. Like, this could happen to them just as easily.
Right.
Oh, it's insane. Okay, so he, like Zenaida, like the girl, was lying in the snow with his head towards the tent. So maybe like her, like they were trying to head back to the tent when they died. And he was also dressed better than the other hikers. He had long sleeves, he had another shirt, he had a sweater, 2 pairs of pants, 4 pairs of socks, and a boot on his right foot. So he had 310 rubles in his pocket. Mm-hmm. So, which is why I'm assuming that 5 rubles really isn't that much money to carry on you.
Yeah.
But I don't know that 310 is not also like a little amount of money. So he had that in his pocket. He also had a small pocket knife, a pencil, a pen, a comb, a box of matches, and 1 cotton sock. So, like, he seemed to be pretty well stocked.
Yeah, much better than the other ones.
So, there's, like, a theory, too, that some of the hikers were already outside the tent when whatever happened went down. Okay. And that's why some of them seem to be a little more prepared than some of the others. So he had a fractured skull, which was hypothesized to be from a blunt object. In his autopsy found he most likely suffered from some sort of loss of coordination due to the initial shock of the trauma. So he also had, like, trauma to his body. So his official cause of death was also hypothermia, and it's still a bit of a mystery as to how he sustained his injuries.
Okay, so I have a new theory, but it's probably going to change when I hear about the rest of the bodies that were found.
Okay.
But my new theory is that one of them, like, snapped and went crazy, and that's why they had to get out of the tent so quickly, and that's why he or she chased them up the tree and, like, bashed their skull in, and, you know, murdered them. So that's my new theory, but we'll see what happens.
You're pretty spot on with one of the theories.
Okay, look at me.
That literally is one of the theories, that one of them, like, there was a fight or an altercation, or one of them kind of went mad and started attacking the others. One or multiple of them. You should be like a detective, like FBI, actually.
I should.
Hit her up. All right. So, jumping ahead 2 months later. So the final bodies weren't found until 2 months later.
Oh, wow. I guess it was winter, so they, like, stayed a little preserved.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. So the bodies are probably actually pretty well preserved, so they can kind of tell exactly what condition they were in when it happened. Right. So when the snow began to melt in May, so we're in May now, a Manzi native found some cut branches that were forming a trail, which they followed, finding black cotton sweatpants about 50 meters from the cedar tree, where the other hikers were found. So really not that far away. They were really not that far away the whole time. Yeah. And it took 2 2 months later for them to kind of go back, and a native of the area found that. So they found the black cotton sweatpants about 50 meters from the cedar tree where the other hikers were found, and the right leg of those pants had been cut off with a knife.
Oh.
That's weird.
That is weird.
That seems really weird.
Yeah.
Why would you cut one leg of your pants off?
Like the whole leg was cut off? Like the whole pant leg was cut off?
The whole right leg was
Weird.
cut off, the pants. So strange. There was a young fir tree missing its top nearby, and another piece of clothing was found there. So kind of like the cedar tree where the one guy was found like with the branches underneath, this tree had like the whole top cut off.
Yeah.
So like maybe they were climbing the trees to get like firewood or
that's
something. Weird. Like no idea, or trying to climb to the top to see like what was going on. No clue. So the young fir tree was missing its top, and another piece of clothing was found nearby. So it was a sweater, and they figured that it belonged to Lyudmila Dubinina.
Okay.
So the area had already been previously searched.
Gotcha.
So they did actually search this area back when they found the other bodies.
Okay.
But then an avalanche buried them. So that's why they weren't found until all the snow melted, because they just got like fully covered.
Yeah.
And the final 4 hikers were found that same day. So a den was made about 75 meters from the cedar tree, so they're really close. Like, they're right on. They were right there the whole time. So the den, we can assume, was made by the last surviving members of the group, trying to keep themselves nice and warm. So they clearly realized their threats, and they did everything they could to protect themselves, including, as I mentioned, taking the clothing from the first of the group to die. So that kind of explains why some of them had, like, a random sock and not, like, another random sock, stuff like that. I just started grabbing them off the dead. Can you imagine? You're out with your friends.
I was just thinking that. Like, I cannot imagine having to take clothes off my friends' dead bodies.
Have you seen that movie or, like, read that book about that soccer team that got in a plane crash and they had to, like, eat each other? Can you imagine?
Ugh,
like,
no.
I don't know I don't know what's worse, like, doing that to survive or just, like, letting yourself die. So they knew something was really bad, and they did everything they could to keep themselves alive. So the final 4 bodies were in the worst and, frankly, the most mysterious conditions of all of them.
Okay.
So if you thought, like, the way the other ones were found was weird, like, this is worse. So a few of those bodies, the final bodies found, had radiation present on them.
What?
Yeah, so even stranger, all but 3 of the group members had significant crushing damage to their bones. Like, internal crushing damage. Doctors compared it to the force of being hit by a car. Like, some of them had external injuries, but for the most part, like, they all had this, like, as if they were hit by a car, internal
That's so weird.
bone-crushing injuries. Yeah, so weird. So they have radiation. They're all, like, crushed on the inside. And the last of the bodies were also found a few feet away from their makeshift shelter in a really, really deep part of a ravine. It's like, why would they go down there?
Yeah.
So Lyudmila Dubinina, the other girl, wore a short-sleeved shirt and 2 sweaters, one of which belonged to Yuri K. She also had on socks, underwear, long socks, 2 pairs of pants, a small hat, 2 pairs of socks, and a third sock missing its match. So they, like, keep getting more dressed as they, like, the ones that survived a little bit longer. So the ones that died right away are the least dressed.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
And then she attempted to save her feet by using someone's sweater to wrap around them. So she knew that, like, frostbite was setting in and she was probably going to lose her feet. And she was doing everything she could to just keep them warm. So the body of Seyman Zolotaryov was found with 2 hats, a scarf, a long sleeve, a sweater, and a coat.
Okay.
So, like, Mr. Mysterious has, like, everything he needs to survive the weather.
Yeah. Interesting.
So it was clear he did not die from the cold like the others.
Oh.
He was warm in the den. He had been carrying a camera at the time of his death, but unfortunately, the melting water damaged the film.
No!
What was on the camera?
Oh, gosh.
What was so important to capture while fleeing the tent
Yeah.
that night? Like, what was so important that he was like, let me grab... Because the other group, too, like, some of the other group had cameras, but, like, he was the only one to really grab the camera during all of this. Like, this is going down in...
Okay, I have a new theory.
Okay.
Bigfoot. You want to take pictures, it could crush you.
That is another one of the theories. Mm-hmm. You're, like, spot on all of the theories, Ashley. Like, a Yeti is literally another one of the theories. So he had been carrying the camera, but of course the film was damaged, so we don't know what's on the camera. He and Dubinina, so the girls' bodies, had very similar injuries, suggesting that they had not been from one single event.
Oh. Okay.
So, like, that's also really weird. Like, their injuries came about from, like, a bunch of different things and not just one major event.
Well, and then now that I'm thinking about my theory, if it was one person or like a couple people, well, probably more likely one person that snapped, how do they have those huge crushing injuries? Like, how would a person do that?
Exactly. Yeah. How does one person give someone else injuries that are similar to literally being hit by a car?
All right.
A Yeti, on the other hand.
Okay, I'm going with the Yeti now.
That's like what I meant by like aliens seem not so out of the ordinary for this story. Because a Yeti is like an actual legit theory. So, Alexander Kolotov, the 8th hiker to be found, was dressed well, but he was missing a hat and his shoes. His upper torso was protected by 5 layers of shirts, sweaters, and jackets. 5. So his jacket was unzipped too, which would have been an indication of possible death from hypothermia due to something called paradoxical undressing. So it's like when you get so cold that you start to feel like you're burning up from the inside. And so you feel like you're on fire, you feel like you're so hot that you actually start taking off your clothes.
Yeah.
Which is no good. So his lower body was also dressed in several layers, and the waistband of his sweater and lower parts of his trousers were tested to be radioactive.
So do they ever like talk about, and maybe you will, and if you do, just tell me to shut up, but they all found with radioactive material on them, and that one guy was accident. Are they able to connect that at all?
So that's one thing that they think could explain why some of the bodies had radioactive matter. They also went looking into all of the different, like, relationships between the groups. So, like, maybe there was, like, a fight over the girls or something like that, or maybe, like, relations involving the ones with radiation. Some of the other ones, because they work at like an engineering school, might have been subjected to radiation just like in their daily classes. So they think that kind of explains where the radiation comes from, but it really doesn't fully explain if that's what was going on there. Mm-hmm. So the final body to be found was that of Nikolai Thibault Brignol, and he too was well protected against the frigid Siberian weather. So it was suggested that perhaps he and Simon, so our tall, dark, older, mysterious man, were already outside the tent when the mysterious threat struck them, due to just how much clothing they had on compared to the rest of the hikers. So they think they were already outside, they hadn't gone to bed yet, or whatever. So Nikolai was found with this is interesting. So he was found with 2 watches on his left arm. One of them stopped at exactly 8:14, and the other one stopped at exactly 8:39. So is this kind of around the time that shit went down?
Yeah.
Do those have, like, a specific meaning? Did he, like, make sure he set the watches at a specific time for people when they came and found him? Like, what's going on there? That his watches are stopped at different times.
Yeah.
So, theories. There have been so many theories trying to explain the mystery of what happened.
Okay.
Because it is so mysterious. Nothing really makes sense. Again, I said it before, but I'll say it again. These hikers knew what they were doing. This was not their first rodeo. This is not their first near-death experience either. I'm sure they thought that's what it was at the time. So, just a few of the theories that try and explain what happened at Dyatlov Pass that fateful night. So, the first one is that Seaman Zolotaryov, Alexander Kolevatov, and Yuri Krivonishenko were KGB agents. And that is the, oh my gosh, this got me really, really, really horrible pronunciation, but it is the Komitet Gosadarstvoy Bezopnosti.
That's exactly, I'm sure, how you say it.
That's 100% it. It's essentially their Russian version of the CIA. So they think those three were KGB agents on a mission to undercover a cell of CIA agents from America. So this theory was written up by Alexei Rakitin, and it states that Seaman and Alexander specifically were to deliver radioactive samples and then take photographs of Americans, like, along the route, but something went wrong, and then the CIA agents killed the entire group.
I don't like that theory.
No, it doesn't, like, where are the Americans coming from? None of them are American.
I don't like that one.
Okay. So, the hikers were mistaken for Gulag fugitives and killed. Which, like, these people do not seem like the people that you would mistake as a Gulag fugitive.
I don't like that theory either.
No, okay. The hikers got caught in a Russian military testing site and exposed to radiation. Okay, so plausible theory. They were killed by the local Mansi tribe. So the Mansi tribe are like the natives of the mountain area, and they are known to be very protective of their land. So the theory is that they killed the entire group.
Okay.
I think you'll like this theory. They all went crazy tripping on shrooms.
Yeah, okay, I can see that one.
They were so, like, we have no idea.
Yeah. Maybe, like, if they were taking bath salts or something that makes you crazy psycho, I could see that.
Yeah.
But shrooms,
I mean, these seem like good kids. Maybe it was their first time and they didn't know what to do.
Maybe.
And they're, like, in the middle of the Russian winter that they went a little crazy.
And they just, like, lost their minds. Yeah. Okay. All right.
But I think that's just, at this point, it's just people being like, we have no idea. Maybe it's this. Maybe it's that. Okay. Spotted UFOs and then were killed by the aliens.
Mm-hmm. That seems the most plausible so far.
And, they looked through the film on some of the other cameras, and, like, there's some questionable photos on some of the other camera films. Like, possible UFOs,
Really?
possible Yetis. And all of those pictures are on that DyatlovPass.com website. So if you're, like, interested in seeing them, and you can decide for yourself if you think it is, like, a Yeti or if you think it is, like, UFOs. But that's kind of where those theories come from.
Okay, so I'm going to look at the pictures, and then we can discuss it next week.
Okay. So, they were caught hit by Soviet rocket launches.
No, I don't like that one.
Don't like that one?
No.
Infrasound caused them to flee and succumb to the weather. Do you know what infrasound is?
I feel like I've heard of it. Tell me.
It's basically like frequencies that the human ear can't hear, but can cause like paranoia and can cause panic and stuff like that in people that are exposed to it. So it's like it's a natural phenomenon that happens, and you'll never be able to hear it, but you'll definitely experience physical symptoms that are usually like hysteria, panic, stuff like that.
Okay, I like this theory.
So, plausible theory, right? Yeti.
Okay.
I like it. I mean, like, hey, so everyone's like, there's no such thing as a Bigfoot, there's no such thing as a Sasquatch, there's no such thing as a Yeti, but like, I feel like it's not that outlandish to believe that there's, like, some, like, bear hybrid thing that is a Yeti.
Yeah, okay.
You know what's not realistic is the theory that they were caught in a teleportation experiment.
Ooh, I like that one. That's the one.
I just don't see how that fits in.
The only thing I could see from that is, like, the crushing of the bones, like, teleporting gone wrong. I mean, I could see that.
Right. Oh, okay. Yeah, like time travel issues and teleporting issues. Like, I didn't think of that. I was like, that's ridiculous. But now that you say that, like, okay. Well, less ridiculous. That they were struck by lightning or ball lightning. Still doesn't really seem to add up with, like, that many people dying and being that scattered.
Yeah, that's true.
The next theory is that there were problems with the stove inside the tent. But then, like, I don't know. But there's no thing indicating that, like, the stove blew up or, like, caught on fire or anything like that. So unless they were, like, breathing in carbon monoxide somehow and they knew that and then, like, we're gonna wait it out outside the tent.
Why would you wait it out that long to where you froze to death? You know, you just moved the stove out of the tent.
True. You just open the door.
Yeah.
Gravity fluctuation.
No. Don't like that one.
Like, that's not it. Katabatic wind, which is falling wind. It's like wind that, like, flies down the mountain at, like, horrible forces.
Yeah.
Which could kind of explain the, like, crushing, but it doesn't explain why they were, like, all so scattered.
They blew around.
They blew away. So at this point, it's, like, a couple different things in play, maybe, right?
Yeah.
Like, maybe infrasound, like, caused them to originally flee the tent because they thought something was, like, they were experiencing that panic. And then maybe, like, the katabatic wind coming down the mountain, like, blew them all over.
Yeah, and gave them that crushing. I like that one.
Okay. Wolverine attack.
They'd have clear animal marks.
And not Hugh Jackman Wolverine, like real Wolverine.
Oh, I'd like to be attacked by that Wolverine.
My mom would love to be attacked by that Wolverine.
Except I like him better in The Greatest Showman. He's cuter in that one.
I was gonna say my mom doesn't really like him in Wolverine, but she absolutely loves him in The Greatest Showman. Okay, so that's another thing, is two of them were missing eyeballs. And one of them is missing their tongue.
But still, I don't think a Wolverine is going to be that precise.
Yeah. Okay. So, like, the thing is, I think the theory behind that is, like, scavenging animals coming by.
I think they'd have more tissue gone.
But, like, still.
Yeah.
So it was, like, one of them missing an eyeball, and then the girl, Ludmila, or I think it was the second girl found, was missing her eyes and her tongue.
Yeah, I just feel like there'd be more, like, damage to the body if that was the case. Like, why would they eat just the eyes and the tongue?
Exactly. And why just, like, pick two people?
Yeah. I don't like that one either.
Okay. Menthol poisoning.
What? Where was menthol?
I don't know. I
don't like that one.
But, like, does menthol poisoning make you go, like, crazy, maybe?
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Me neither. So this is the one that you kind of, like, guessed already. Fights between the hikers. So, like, an altercation that got, like, way out of hand.
Well, and maybe the infrasound caused them to fight.
Yeah.
Okay, so the infrasound caused them to panic. And then they took shrooms, and then they were all sleeping with each other, which passed that radiation around. And then they got mad at each other for sleeping with each other, and then they all beat each other up. And then the wind came down and blew them.
And then they went outside to find a Yeti waiting for them. And then the Yeti was teleported away from the nearby UFO that was just waiting.
We figured it out, Rochelle.
Solved! We solved it! Done! Arctic hysteria.
Yeah, okay.
Which I don't really know what Arctic hysteria is, but I can assume it's, like, going crazy because you're, like, in the middle of frozen nowhere. This one's kind of weird. Death by snowmobile.
What?
Yeah, like, where is the snowmobile coming from?
And why is he chasing them all down and hitting each one of them? Like, I feel like this is, like, Russian version of Scream or something. That's not... No, I don't like that one at all.
one by one, just mowed down by a snowmobile.
Yeah, I don't like that one.
It's the Yeti rides a snowmobile. How else is he supposed to get around?
Duh.
Okay, so the final theory and the most probable theory is an avalanche. Doesn't really seem to make sense either, because it didn't look like they were hit by an avalanche, because then everything would have been covered,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, it would make sense for the crushing injuries, but that's really about it.
But, like, maybe it makes sense, like, as to why some of the group was fully covered, like the last of the group that they couldn't find until all the snow melted.
Yeah, but I feel like that would be easily proven, because they would have one record of any avalanche.
Yeah.
Two, they would have to have had like weather that called for a warming of it to melt the snow to find some of those bodies. And then wouldn't they be like wet?
Right. Yeah. And it's so close to, like, they really weren't that far. I think it was like 50 meters or something away when all the snow melted, that they realized they were like that close to the rest of them. All right. So what really happened to those 9 hikers on the mountain? Well, they think they finally figured it out, Ashley, but you'll have to tune in next week for part 2.
Oh, what a great spot to do that at.
I thought that would be a fun spot to, like, hang off on, because then you can, like, go and look through some of the photos.
Yeah.
You can kind of, like, try and figure it out for yourself. And then we'll talk about what they think actually happened, and why some of the other theories are, like, so outlandish that there's no way that that's
awesome.
what would have happened next time.
Well, if you want more of us 3 lovely ladies, you can find us on our website at historiesandmysteriespodcast.godaddysites.com.
Go Daddy.
You do that every time. I love it. You can give us episode suggestions. We take those and we get them straight to our email. You can just send us an email telling us how we're doing. And also, please, if you can, take the time to rate and review us on any of the podcast platforms you listen to us on.
Yes, please.
Well, we hope you have a great week, and we look forward to bringing you 2 new stories next week. Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.